Hey everybody, I have been thinking for a while about doing a video about what rights are. And the reason I wanted to do this is because we talk a lot about rights, and I feel like we don't talk enough about responsibilities, but that's that's a video for another day. I just want to talk about what rights are. And if you search on the internet, you get the so unofficial Wikipedia source of rights, which I think actually does a decent job. The second result that I got is rights from Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, which kind of tells you that the world looks at rights as a philosophical idea, right? It's not necessarily objective. Um, I think they would argue against that. They would say, no, no, philosophy can be objective. It doesn't have to be subjective. But at any rate, I'll explain the way that I explain what rights are to my own kids, because I heard this definition back when I was a young married person, and I thought it was just a fantastic definition of what a right is, and what a right is not. So here's the basic premise. If you are on a desert island, there's no one else there, nobody owns it, it's just an island. Um, your rights are whatever you can do on that island. That's the simplest form. Now, if it's a pretty big island and you've got more than one person on the island, then your rights would include whatever doesn't infringe on other people's rights. Okay, whatever right you're taking, you need to make sure that you're not taking that same right from someone else. And then, if the more and more people you get on the island, the more and more complex this gets. If there's 1,000 people on the island, you're going to have to start having rules, laws, things that people have to follow. But the basic premise is that whatever you can do all by yourself, those are your rights. Um, so let me parse this out a little bit more, because in the Declaration of Independence, it says that we are endowed by our Maker with inalienable rights, um, among which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Um, and that is really similar to an older philosophy of life, liberty, and property. I'm not positive why our founders took that out, but there is a really good reason if you want to go look it up. I've heard people talk about it, but it's been years and it's not on the top of my mind anymore. Um, but life, liberty, and property is so you're on this island all by yourself. There's a forest, there's a beach, there's water, there's coconuts. You have the right to be alive because that's something you can do on your own. Liberty, you can decide what you're going to do with your time. Um, and property. If you find a specific patch of trees that you think are really great, nobody else owns them, you can build yourself a little hut there. You can start collecting, crab shells and whatever curios you want. It's property, okay? You put in the labor to create something and you get to keep it, okay? So now we've got life, we've got liberty, and we've got property. Now, if there's 1,000 people living on this island, your rights to property end where someone else's rights to property begin. You can't take something that belongs to somebody else because that infringes on their rights. You have a responsibility to protect the rights of everybody else on the island. Now, let's talk about what a right isn't. You do not have the right to, um, well, there's a destination I'm trying to get to here, and I have to be careful about getting there because if I jump straight to what I'm trying to say, I'm afraid people will, throw the yellow flag and call foul. Um, so I kind of broached on you can have property rights as long as you're not infringing on someone else's property rights. By extension to that, your labor is your own property, and so you get to alienate your labor and you get to decide who you're going to spend it for. You can hire yourself out. You have the right to do that. Now there's not a right to indentured servitude unless you place yourself in it. But a lot of countries don't allow that, which I think is great. I think is fine. But on this whole desert island idea, uh, you you don't just get to take people, right? Because that infringes on their liberty. So, anyways, let's talk about some things that aren't right. So I'm just going to jump into it because I can't find a tactful way to get there. You don't have a right to health care. Okay? If you're on a desert island, the only healthcare you have a right to is the healthcare that you can provide to yourself. Okay? If there's a doctor out there, they have the right to alienate their labor. They don't have to give you treatment if they don't want to. That's their right. And if you say that I have a right to healthcare, you are infringing on that doctor's right. So this idea that people have a right to healthcare is ridiculous if you think about rights as something that you can do without infringing on someone else's rights. That would be like I'm an IT professional. I make I run servers, I spin them up, I configure them. That would be like saying that you have a right to web hosting. You have a right, and I have to provide the server for you because you have a right to it. And suddenly, my labor is alienated by you. I I don't have my rights anymore because you've taken my rights. Healthcare is the same thing. Um, so hopefully that's not a difficult jump to make because in order to have healthcare, you have to pay someone else or somebody has to pay something else. And we say, well, the government pays for it. And then suddenly we're not taking. Well, unfortunately, the government takes my money. So by saying that you have a right to healthcare, what you're saying is you have a right to my labor because I'm paying now for the healthcare. So I would argue that that is not a right. That is a privilege that you can earn, that you can buy, but it is not a right. Okay, now let's talk about one that's even more dangerous to talk about. You don't have a right to marriage. You don't have a right to sex. You don't have those rights. And the reason I say that is because if you have two people and they want to get married, then they are both using their liberty to get married. And that is fine. Okay. If you have one person who wants to get married and one person who doesn't want to get married, um, in in generations past, the community would sometimes match them up and they would get married. That's not liberty. And I don't think that society should take that right and say, well, we have a right to match these people up because that's good for the society and we're going to do it. Well, no, I disagree with that. So I don't think that there's a right to get married unless every party involved is like, yeah, I want that. Well, then that is your liberty to get married. Now, here's where it gets really dicey. Um, the the government, both left and right, they want to incentivize what they think is best for society. This isn't a new concept. It's happened forever, where the government will incentivize behavior that they want to see. I remember a few years ago, Candace Pierucci, she was running for the Utah House of Representatives, and we're no longer in her district, but at that time it was before the census, and we were in her district, and she came to our house and spoke to me and Shayla, and we had a really great conversation, and there was only one thing that we really disagreed on, and it was something that Shayla agreed with Candace on, and that was whether we incentivize getting married and having children. And I said that that infringes on liberty to take people's tax money and incentivize having kids, getting married. And Candace was like, no, I don't think so, because the government is supposed to promote the common welfare, the common good. And it is good for people to get married and have children and raise those children in a stable home where they get an education, they learn about rights and responsibilities, and they become good citizens that then propagate the culture. We have a vested interest in that, and therefore we should incentivize it. That is a strong argument. And a lot of conservatives make that argument. Um, and then on the left, you've got people who want to incentivize a huge range of what they would call beneficial behaviors. And and the right and the left, they kind of argue back and forth about, whether that is constitutional, about whether there's actually a right to do that. And then you've got the people like me. You would have to call me a libertarian on this, although I would choose to call myself a constitutionalist on this, although that can be argued. And when push comes to shove, yeah, I've got a strong libertarian stroke in me that says that we should not be incentivizing how people live. We should have laws and we should have penalties for breaking the laws. But beyond that, you choose what you want to do. If you want to get married. But don't do it because you're going to get a tax break. That's ridiculous. Um, if you want to have kids, you should have kids. And you should have kids. That is how we're going to propagate the culture. And as a religious person, I've got a whole nother list of reasons why. But as a culture, we need to be having kids. We need to be raising those kids and perpetuating our society with good, wholesome values that we teach our children. So, yeah, you should do that. But I want you to choose to do that because it's the right thing to do, not because you're going to get a tax break. Um, so I'm getting up to, I try to cut these videos before they go too long. I may come back and talk about this subject some more, but remember that a right is no longer a right when you have to infringe on someone else's rights to do it. And consequently, marriage, you have a right for two people to get married, and this is an endorsement basically of gay marriage, of you know many forms of marriage. But the libertarian bone in my body says, yeah, do that, but don't expect the society to congratulate you and to give you the earnings of my hands because of that. Yeah, do Shayla and I receive benefits because we're married and because we have children? Yes, we do. Is that nice? It's nice. But I wish that we didn't do it because the doing the right thing for the wrong reason doesn't help you as a person. Maybe it helps society, but in the long run, I don't even think that helps society. I think the society will crumble if people are doing the right things, but for the wrong reasons. And so let me know what you think. I would love to have a conversation about this in the comments, or even if you want to record a video as a reply, I would love to watch some and we can go back and forth about this. Tell me what you think about rights and if there's a good place to draw the line, or if there's really no place to draw the line, that rights should only increase, they should never decrease. And when we get there, we'll probably have a conversation about responsibilities as well. But please let me know what you think. Thanks for listening and have a great day.